Hi, folks. This is Steve Adubato. This is the Steve Adubato Leadership Hour with my co-host and colleague, Mary Gamma. How you doing, Mary?
I'm doing great today, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing great. Again, I say this a lot, but I'll say it again. One of the most enjoyable and gratifying things about the Leadership Hour is talking to innovative, creative, strategic leaders who are always thinking about things out of the box, things other people don't think about. And today is no exception. We're going to have Bob Garrett, who is the CEO of Hackensack Meridian Health, a great healthcare organization that I've known and worked with for a long time. Mary, real quick, before we get Bob on the line, let everybody know how they can catch us.
Absolutely. There's a variety of places. So first and foremost, online, stand-deliver.com is our website. We have a tremendous amount of articles up there on leadership, communication, team building, all for free articles. They can learn about your book, Lessons in Leadership, and other books there as well. And as well as on Facebook, they can follow you, Steve Adubato, PhD, and that's Adubato, as well as on Twitter, Steve Adubato. And if you're listening to us on AM 970, you could also subscribe to our podcast on Apple, iTunes, and Google Play to catch some of the previous podcasts that we've done.
Good stuff. So we are pleased to introduce our good friend, Bob Garrett, Chief Executive Officer, Hackensack Meridian Health. Good to talk to you, Bob.
Good to talk to you guys, too. Thanks for having me, Steve and Mary.
Our pleasure. By the way, Bob, for people who do not know what Hackensack Meridian Health is, describe it, the hospitals, the expansion every day. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, Steve, thank you. We're 17 hospitals now. We're in about 500 different patient care locations, really spanning much of the state of New Jersey. We have 34,000 team members and about 7,000 doctors that are affiliated. So we've really grown a lot over these past couple of years, and it's really been a pleasure to be able to grow and serve a greater number of New Jersey residents. As a matter of fact, 2/3 of all of New Jersey's population is within our primary service area.
And before we get into the substance of leadership with Bob Garrett, Bob, will you please acknowledge, even though the Super Bowl, when this show airs, we're taping it right before the Super Bowl, it will air after, and clearly our team was not in it. Could you please acknowledge your connection to the New York Football Giants?
Sure, there's a connection that goes back to when I was a child. I was a fan my entire life. But when I had the opportunity to lead Hackensack Meridian, we had the real opportunity to partner with the New York Giants. And Steve, partnerships are crucial.
Exactly.
No matter what space they're in. And in this particular partnership, they've been terrific. So we've been able to, through co-branding, we've been able to put together a new fitness and wellness center. We've been able to raise significant dollars for pediatric cancer research through a program called Tackle Kids Cancer. And Eli Manning, their quarterback, has been amazing.
Amazing.
Through his efforts, almost $3 million have been raised already. So it's been a great partnership. And people ask me all the time, they said, did that partnership come about because you've been a lifelong fan of the New York Giants? And my answer is yes. But beyond that, they have been just a tremendous partner, and we're very proud of working with the Giants.
And along those lines, let's also disclose a couple things. Our production team was out at the Health Expo, right, Bob, over at Giant Stadium.
Yes.
With you and your team and a whole bunch of other folks, the folks at NBC in New York, great folks. And we actually talked to folks from the Giants, from your folks and others who were there. It is an amazing day where the focus is on health. And let me disclose that not only is Hackensack Meridian Health one of the underwriters of our programming on PBS, Fios, and other digital platforms, but in all candor, I've been doing executive coaching, leadership development at Hackensack Meridian Health for physician leaders, others, for more than a couple of years. And so I know this organization very well, and just want to say thank you for that opportunity, Bob.
Well, we appreciate your efforts, Stephen. That Health Expo up at the Meadowlands,
where awesome.
Some of the New York Giants participated, just is a great event because it really does help educate the public about what it means to be healthy, some of the tactics, some of the lessons to be learned in terms of fitness and wellness. So we enjoy it because that's a big part of our mission, is really not just to take care of sick patients, but to keep our communities and the general population as healthy as possible.
So let's do this, Bob. Let's jump into the whole question of leadership. Again, you and I have had a lot of offline conversation about leadership development, coaching and mentoring people, succession planning, restructuring your team, mergers, like blah, blah, blah. So let's do this. And blah, blah, blah doesn't mean anything not serious. It means we talk about a lot of things. But here's the question. I'm looking at an article on ROI, Return on Information Publication, on the front page. For Hackensack Meridian Health, carrier merger is just a start. a merger with Carrier Clinic. Why is the merger with Carrier Clinic, in fact, a leadership question?
I believe it's a leadership question because I think partnerships are a big part of leadership. So one thing a leader needs to do is to understand his or her organization and understand what they can do on their own and where they need some help. And quite frankly, a big organization like Hackensack Meridian, which does so many great things in so many ways, and I could not be more proud of our team. There are certain key areas where partnerships are really necessary. So it really is part of leadership to understand when a partnership is necessary. And in this case, Carrier Clinic, being one of New Jersey's leading behavioral health care providers, and I think the largest in the state, we felt that type of partnership would really allow us to take a true leadership role in providing behavioral health services. We have some great things planned with the Carrier Clinic where we will lead. As an example, we intend to really integrate behavioral health into our healthcare system. So it will be looked at and viewed, and the services will be provided as if it's just another disease entity, whether it's cancer or diabetes or heart disease. It needs to be mainstream because there's still a big stigma when it comes to mental health and behavioral health.
Well said, but I'm going to follow up on something else about partnerships, Bob. When Hackensack merged with Meridian, right? So how many hospitals, I'm putting you on the spot here, how many hospitals on the Hackensack end, how many hospitals on the Meridian end?
Well, it's grown, but the original merger constituted 4 hospitals on the Hackensack side, and it was, at the time, 7 hospitals on the Meridian side. Now we've grown to 17 since the merger.
Here's what I'm getting at. For a leader, how challenging is it to bring together 2 organizations with different cultures, different styles, different geography into one cohesive, we're all moving the bus, a la Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great, in the same direction? Am I making too much of this, Bob?
Not at all. A lot of mergers look great on paper, and, this one did as well because there were some strategic benefits that each of us had going into the merger, such as the fact that Hackensack was nationally recognized for its clinical care. It had a big investment in research and a new school of medicine that was to come. So academics and research were a strength. Meridian had this full continuum of care, Steve, that really complemented Hackensack's hospital expertise because we knew as time went on, more and more care was going to be provided outside the 4 walls of the hospital. But you know what? It looked good on paper, but at the end of the day, it comes down to culture and cultural integration that really makes the difference because even with those complements, if you weren't able to unite the 2 cultures, which were different, quite frankly, from one another, if you weren't able to unite those cultures, we would not be successful. Now, truth be told, we're still working on cultural integration. It's an ongoing process.
What does it take, Bob? Sorry for interrupting. How have you, because you went from a co-CEO situation with John Lloyd. You are the CEO now. John Lloyd was on the legacy, if you will, Meridian side. What do you do as a leader, because you're pretty hands-on, what do you do to connect, communicate, and engage folks face-to-face on this and in other ways?
First of all, visibility is very important. So I'm out and about. We do rounding on a regular basis where we go to all of our different locations. We talk about culture. We talk about our mission. We talk about our vision. We talk about some of our cultural values. We do virtual town hall meetings, too, because we're spread out to so many campuses, Steve. And to get all 34,000, we do virtual town hall meetings.
34,000 employees?
34,000 team members throughout the state of New Jersey. So, it's huge. And like I said, we're actually in 500 different patient care sites. So practically you can't get to every site, certainly every month or every other month. So what you try to do is to get the message out to so many different people. So I like to be in person wherever possible, but we use technology like a virtual town hall to get the word out there. We're also going to be having for the first time this year, we're going to have an all-team member event. So over the course of a week, we're going to try to get all 34,000 team members in person to kind of hear the message, to hear about our united culture. And people ask all the time, they say, well, how did Hackensack and Meridian unite? What was the common ground that we united on in terms of culture? And it really revolves around one word, and that's innovation. So what we say in our vision is that innovation is in our DNA. And we have really united around this concept of innovation. I strongly believe that healthy companies are ones that are innovative. Healthy cultures are ones that are rooted in innovation. So that's really been the common factor. And if you looked at the history of both Legacy Hackensack and Legacy Meridian, they both were innovative in their own way. So we really united around the concept that we are a culture of innovation.
You're listening to Bob Garrett. He is the CEO of Hackensack Meridian Health. This is Steve Adubato. This is the Steve Adubato Leadership Hour on AM 970, The Answer, and also our podcast. I'm here with my colleague, Mary Gamba. Bob, I want to follow up and make your life more complicated, and hopefully in a good way. So you had a background before being the CEO of being an operations person as well. Fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Chief Operating Officer for many years.
Right. So here's where I'm going. When you have an operational background and you know how to, quote, get things done, get the trains moving on time and things moving effectively and efficiently, you're really good on the management operational end. How hard was it, and how do you coach and mentor people who move from the operational side to the CEO side, which is not exactly the same as a COO, Chief Operating Officer? It's a long-winded way of getting to this. How did you develop yourself to be a more, quote, strategic leader, thinker, as opposed to, I'm not going to say just operations because that's so important, but it is just operations. What's the difference?
Yeah, you hit on something really important. Some chief operating officers don't make the leap successfully from COO to CEO because they're really the people that make the trains run on time, that get it done each day. But I always felt that in my case that I had a strategic vision. I always was interested in how healthcare was going in the future. And I was fortunate at Hackensack that I did participate in strategy and development of strategic initiatives. So even though my title was Chief Operating Officer, I was allowed to not only develop the vision, but the key strategic priorities over many years. But I think you're absolutely right. There's a definite difference between operations and being a CEO. And fortunately or unfortunately, some people are cut out for it. Some people aren't. I've seen cases where COOs have made great leaders and CEOs. Some of them are my mentors out there, but there are others that just haven't been able to make that leap.
And real quick on this, Bob, the other thing is, and again, because I've done some coaching there, you've had to tell some folks who are COOs, I hate to call them, they're not number twos, they're just in a different role, but they're convinced because they have been a COO for a certain amount of time, I'm supposed to be the CEO, I'm supposed to be the president, and you've had to have conversations with folks telling them that it ain't going to happen.
That's right.
Not a fun part of being a leader.
It's not a fun part, but it's a necessary part because the worst thing that could happen is that you set somebody up for failure, and that just because they're in a position and they're expected to move up, and if they're not ready or they don't have the mindset to move up, that's probably the worst thing you could do for them, for you, and for the organization. So, I mean, I've seen CEOs come from so many different backgrounds. I mean, today in healthcare, we have physicians, so we have clinical CEOs, we have people who've had nursing backgrounds, we have had people who have had legal backgrounds. So it's really not about a particular position that you are coming from. It's really about your strategic mindset.
Before I let you go, Bob, real quick, the World Economic Forum in Davos, I think you're presenting there. You guys are a part of it. Leaders from all over the world, right?
Yes, leaders from all over the world, healthcare leaders, other types of leaders, leaders of nations, many of the European nations, their presidents or prime ministers will be there. And it's a great opportunity. We have a growing healthcare community there, and we get together and we talk about various issues. We're going to be talking this year about innovation, about technology, about partnerships. You know, some of the things that we're doing here at Hackensack Meridian, we're going to be talking about on a global scale. And if you think about some of the healthcare challenges that are out there globally, I think some of the strategies that we've used here at Hackensack Meridian would be very applicable.
Absolutely. By the way, real quick, our production company, to tell everyone listening right now, we have a series on innovation called Innovation New Jersey that we're going to be doing, and also a series that Bob has participated on and will again on the future of healthcare. Bob, before I let you go, Mary and I talk an awful lot about how great leaders often need to find ways to physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually take care of themselves. I happen to know, because you and I talk about this a lot, I don't want to belabor it, but exercise is a huge part of your life, correct?
It is. It's kind of sacrosanct. I just want to make sure that I get my workouts in. I have a personal trainer really for the purpose of keeping me focused on it. And I think it's all about the mind, body, and spirit. And I think exercise can really bring out the best of people in every which way. So I certainly subscribe to it, and I recommend it as a leadership tool to stay healthy and to be as sharp as possible.
That's Bob Garrett, Chief Executive Officer, Hackensack Meridian Health. He bleeds giant blue, if you will, and is always hopeful about next year. We will have to wait and see. And Bob, I want to thank you for joining Mary and I on the Leadership Hour on AM 970, The Answer, and also on our podcast. Thank you, Bob. Talk soon.
Thank you for having me. Take care, you guys.
All the best.
Thanks, Bob.
Brian, can we go to a quick break?
Sure, absolutely.
Quick break and come right back right after that.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
This edition of the Steve Adubato Leadership Hour has been made possible by New Jersey Resources. Welcome back to the Leadership Hour. Steve Adubato here with my colleague Mary Gamba. We were just listening to Bob Garrett talking about leadership, talking about mergers, partnerships, collaboration. So let's pick up on this theme, Mary. We partner, our organization partners. Actually, the irony is we're here in the studio with Brian Brodeur and his team. We partner with Brian. Mm-hmm. Let's stay on that. Okay, we partner with other media organizations. We're partners with NJTV.
Yeah,
we're
print,
partners
television,
with PBS.
radio, yeah.
All kinds of partners. Digital partners, print partners, all kinds of partners, right?
Yeah.
Be strategic here, right? Part of the reason we partner, as Bob Garrett said, is because we know we can't do that thing ourselves. We couldn't do it as well as someone else who does that thing better. So on paper, makes sense. But what I'm curious about is, what about all those people who may think it makes sense to partner, but then they partner and they want to have all the control?
That is the rub. I mean, with partnerships, there's strength in numbers, right? There's a reason why as human beings we get married and we choose to have families and we keep our families in our orbit, because if you have a support system in anything you do, it will help you to be stronger if done correctly. The challenge, as you just said, though, is if you partner with someone else, there is that fear of many leaders, including myself, and I know you and I have spoken about this a lot, of losing control, of not being, number one, not micromanaging the process, knowing where you do need to let go, and knowing what you know, but frankly, knowing what you don't know.
But how do I know what I don't know if I don't know it?
Exactly. But that's where the challenge comes in. But as a great leader, president, CEO, COO, you need to be able to know and be objective enough to step back and say, hey, I know of this great, again, use a real life example, Brian, who's with us here today in the studio. We have a need. We need to be doing something better, whatever the blank, fill in the blank is. And how can we partner to do things in a more efficient fashion?
And by the way, it's a perfect segue because this podcast itself, I mean, Brian and his team, by the way, plug your team, Brian.
Well, here we are at East Main Media in Little Falls, New Jersey. Incredible team here. Operations manager Kayla. We have Dave, our editor, JP in the audio room, Steve Sutton, head of our captioning and archive division. Great team.
Okay, so not only does East Main Media, Brian's team handle just about all of our production on the broadcast side, the editing side, the digital, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this podcast, like we're partnering with AM 970
Yes.
in New York, the radio station. You know, Jerry Crowley, our good friend, the general manager, they were like, well, we have an idea for a leadership show. Okay, fine. We could have sat in a conference room in our office and put a podcast together. We could have. But would the audio be as good? Would the quality be as good? Would the production be as good? Would the editing be as good? So we have to partner with Brian. So, yes, do we control the editorial? But we have to trust. It's a long-winded way of saying a lot of this is about trust, is it not, Brian?
Absolutely. I mean, from our perspective, we want to make this process something that you're comfortable about. And how we interpret that is to have you not worry. So you can do what you need to do to make great content, and we have to deliver it at a very high quality level.
Okay, in this case, it seems pretty clear cut. But when Bob Garrett was talking about two healthcare organizations partnering, right? Merging, partner, whatever it is, who controls is huge.
It is. And again, any great partnership.
By the way, excuse me, ego is a part of this?
Oh, a tremendous part of it. And even just, as you had said, prior to literally just recently, Bob Garrett, who we just had on, was a co-CEO.
Yes.
So think about that. There's two. So if you disagree, then you do have to have a system in place of deal breaker, like someone that's going to come in and be that mediator. So that's often when a board will come in. Maybe you have a chairman of the board.
Or whomever.
Or whomever that person
Or if they
may
don't,
be.
what happens?
I know then. But I think that's when partnerships fail, frankly. If it takes two, right? If you have your co-CEOs, you need to be able to step back and say, there are going to be times that we disagree. So to be the best leaders that we can be, we need to proactively get that third party, that mediator, because if not, what are you going to do? Rock, paper, scissors to, determine, all right, are we going to merge with this hospital or that hospital?
It's so interesting. And partnerships, we talk from a leadership perspective, because this is a leadership show, we often think about partnerships in terms of corporate partnerships, business partnerships, collaborations. I get it. But I don't want to turn this into a program on marriage, but I will say as a partnership, my wife, Jennifer, said to me, I said something about decisions being made. And I forget how I said it, but I said, Jen, I would like to handle such and such. I said, I'm going to handle such and such with our boys. We have 2 teenage boys. And she said, well, okay. And I said, well, because you handle so many things. And she literally said, and I don't know if it was a question of semantics, she said, well, I let you handle a lot of things. And I said, I'm sorry. And I literally reacted to that. And I don't want to turn this into a thing about that. But I said, you let me handle those things? Meaning, in my mind, our partnership is based on the fact that each of us, which is the same as any other kind of partnership, is better at something than the other person is. But sometimes in my mind, if I'm better and I'm handling that, I'm not that interested in your opinion about this, or I may make believe I am, but in the end, that's my turf because I'm better. Help me, Mary.
Wow, you just opened up that box.
But it's true. It's true.
It is true.
We could play the game that, of course, I respect your opinion, but I am better at this and you are better at way more things.
Right.
So let's just leave each other alone and do our things. The problem is it doesn't work that way because each person, whether it's a corporation, individual, marriage, merger, whatever it is, people have opinions.
Yeah, as do the children that you're talking about as well. That
You
are
got to
now,
listen to them too.
You kind of do, because they're going to be adults, young adults, and
They're
your
part of the
children
partnership.
are. And sure, when they're 2, 3, 4 years old, you really get to dictate who they're going to play with and
How
what
about when they're
activities
14,
they're going to
16,
do. Yeah, that's when you do need to. And again, it's a partnership and it's a give and take and it's a negotiation. And as you said, it was a matter of semantics, I'm sure. I mean, not to go back to that, but when, Jen
No,
had
she
said,
did say that, but but I triggered in me like,
yeah.
Hey, wait a minute.
Oh, well, thanks for letting me do some certain things in the household.
But
right?
it's not as clean cut as you take that turf, I'll take in a partnership.
Right.
You handle this, we'll handle that, because there are a lot of gray areas.
There's probably more gray areas than are cut and dry. And I think with every partnership, there's going to be, and again, especially in a marriage, you're not going to have a list on a blackboard of all the specific tasks or activities.
Are you co-CEOs?
But you are co-CEOs.
Are you as parents, as husband,
better,
wife, father, and you're co-CEOs?
I have more friends now that are divorced or getting divorced or separated. Found out about one Saturday. I was like, oh, where's your husband? She's like, oh, ex-husband? I was like, what?
Really?
So, yeah. And I guess, again, age, my husband and I, Bill and I, will be married 20 years in June. So I think you get to a point around now where, wait a second, you were so focused on the kids for so many years, so you made it work, or, you stayed in it for the kids is, what I'm hearing some of my friends and, people that I know in my orbit. And it's fascinating.
But do you no longer want, for some of these folks, going back to the leadership thing, is it that I don't really want to be co-CEO with you anymore?
Exactly. And maybe because of that, maybe because from the beginning, those parameters weren't as clearly delineated as they probably should have been in that marriage, of for better or for worse, for all of those wonderful things.
But is marriage,
that we said.
excuse me for interrupting, is marriage, by the way, Steve Adubato, Mary Gamba, Brian Brodeau talking about marriage relationships and other things.
Yeah.
But is that marriage co-CEO situation a metaphor for any partnership?
Is that a question for me, Steve?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious.
Is my wife listening? Well, I boiled down the overlap to relationships, right? And whether it's a business relationship and there are politics in that. And
Trust me, there's politics in marriage too.
in everything. Yeah, well, that's my point, right? That's my point. But you have to manage the relationship and cultivate it and listen and be aware. And it's an organic thing.
Wow.
And I would like to share one of your really great tools that I use.
Well, it's got to be one after 20 years plus.
This is definitely one of the greatest tools that I've used. And I've heard from your clients, our clients, that this has helped them as well.
At Stand and Deliver,
At
stand-deliver.com.
The hub and spokes. So we've talked about it. So if you can visualize as you're listening, there is
Can we do a bicycle wheel?
It's a bicycle wheel, and in the center is you. And then all the spokes that are coming off of it, you could fill in the blanks. If it's for work, it's all the people in your orbit. Maybe it's your clients, your customers. If you're in sales, it's your board
But you
members.
have to name them. You can't just say your board, your staff.
Exactly.
You have
And
to
then-
name them as individuals.
Right. And then you break it down. And then you don't just have this nice chart. You actually make sure that you're connecting, we always say that you're just reaching out to, and how are you engaging that person or group? So let's use a real life example. Like we were just saying, if we were to go back to the partnerships. So Brian and his team at East Bay Media
They're a huge spoke of ours in our hub and spokes. Go ahead.
And say if, luckily we always have great new initiatives going on. And speaking of innovation, we always have new projects. But say if you didn't, say one of those partners, maybe you just use them a couple times a year for specific projects.
Every relationship's different.
Every relationship is different. But every relationship needs to be nurtured. Every relationship you need to press pause and say, when was the last time I touched base with that client?
And what was the quality of that contact,
what was the quality?
the relationship?
And different people want different hugging, as we
it's like,
say.
leave me alone. I don't really want you to bother me.
Exactly. So you need to manage all of that, and that's part of being a great leader. So that is one practical tool for anyone listening that I think is just a great visual.
And you know what's so interesting about this? And I don't want to turn this into a thing about marriage and divorce and blah, blah, blah. I've been saying blah, blah, blah a lot when I can't think of something else. So do you ever hear people say when they got divorced that they felt the other person wasn't recognizing them enough, they didn't say engaging them enough, but they didn't feel connected. And that's what that is.
It really is.
It's a blind spot that stays blind for too long and too meaningful a way. And then sometimes you just can't turn around. Hey, listen, could you forget the last 5 years? I'd like to go back and try this again.
And that happens in business partners, if you will.
Yes.
And again, I mean, obviously, we just had on Bob Garrett and talking about how many thousand employees? 36,000?
34,000, something like that.
Tons and tons and tons, yeah. But on a smaller, I mean, there's tons of entrepreneurs and young adults and or people who are looking to rebrand and really recreate themselves, say, oh, I'm going to partner with you. I think we have a lot in common, only to find out too much time goes by without checking back in with that partner and making sure that their vision is the same and that they're really going in the same direction.
And that's what, excuse me for interrupting, but that's what the hub and spokes model is. You and the hub, the spokes are the different relationships. And I actually advocate when we're coaching people to actually physically have that chart. Someone says, well, like I have it on my computer. Well, you may have it on your computer or you may have it on your iPhone. You may have it somewhere. But I'm old school in this sense. I say print it out, put it somewhere that you can see it, mark it up. Put the date the last time you talked to Brian. Put the initiative you have to talk to him or her about. Is there a problem or a situation? Mark it, write it down.
And set deadlines. Set deadlines. Don't just say, oh, I need to reach out. No, because if not, each day rolls into the next day.
And what happens, it goes past a certain point and that person, the hub and the spoke, it just ain't interested anymore.
Yeah.
You missed that opportunity.
Exactly.
Because you weren't strategic. You weren't proactive. You weren't assertive. You got too many other things. People say, oh, Steve, you talk about leadership and relationship building. I don't have time to be involved in relationship building and partnerships. I'm too busy, ready for this, running the company.
It's reaching out, and we do it all the time. You reach out to someone if you see that they were mentioned in an article or, here in New Jersey, there's tons of lists, right? There's a list of the best innovators, the best people under 40, the best people under 50, and the best women leaders. But what we do is we take that opportunity to say, hey, Joan, I saw that you were nominated as a top 10, up-and-coming executive women. Congratulations.
Why is that leadership? Someone listening right now in the Leadership Hour is saying, you're talking about marketing. You're talking about public relations. You're talking about schmoozing. That's not leadership.
But it is.
It is.
It's all leadership.
It is.
It really is.
Because leadership Mary's tired of this after almost 20 years. It's about connecting the dots.
It is. And I'm not tired of it.
What dots are we talking about?
Well,
Again,
I know. We use a lot of these terminologies, into the weeds, connecting the dots, and the bus
in terms
analogy.
of relationships, partnerships, what does connecting the dots mean?
It's seeing the bigger picture and not just seeing in a vacuum that this person was recognized in an article, or you ran into someone that knew someone else, and you
That's
just
episodic and
right.
But that's not strategic.
Exactly. And being strategic means making sure that, episodically, if these things are happening, that's fantastic. But you need to have a strategic way of connecting with others, because if not, too much time is going to go by and you're going to miss a lot of opportunities.
And the same thing is true, by the way, in all seriousness, in marriage. If you don't have a strategy,
Oh, yeah.
if you go, I take it day by day. Yeah, I understand. We're all taking it day by day. But if you don't have an overall approach, philosophy, strategy that says, this partnership matters a great deal to me, and I will screw up. And when I do, my strategy is to quickly try to own it.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to, I'll take every situation and I'm going to fight and defend my, that partnership ain't going to be all that strong.
Right.
I'm sorry for going into this whole area, but that, again, I've repeated myself 100 times. The Leadership Hour is not simply about corporate management and leadership. It is about leadership in every aspect of our life, leading in our personal lives, leading ourselves in terms of taking care of ourselves and being the best we can be. It's about leadership as life. And so, listen, I want to thank you, Mary, and also Brian for being part of the conversation, both off the air and on. Mary, anything you want to say why don't we say goodbye?
Yeah, no, goodbye. This has been another great episode.
That's it. I got nothing else to say. Catch you next time in the Leadership Hour. This is Steve Adubato. Thanks.
This is Mary Gamba. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with State of Affairs with Steve Adubato, where we look at the most pressing issues facing the state of New Jersey.
This edition of the Steve Adubato Leadership Hour has been made possible by New Jersey Resources.
This is Tracy Thompson, New Jersey's acting insurance fraud prosecutor. The state of New Jersey is making learning about and reporting insurance fraud easier than ever. At njinsurancefraud.org, you'll find tips on identifying insurance fraud and a simple, confidential form for reporting it. Report it, end it.
Hi, I'm Bob Garrett. At Hackensack Meridian Health, we believe that all residents need to be informed about the important healthcare issues that affect their lives. That's why we're very proud to support the important programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
Funding for this edition of State of Affairs with Steve Adubato has been provided by International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, Hackensack Meridian Health, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Seton Hall University. Come see what great minds can do. Choose New Jersey. Our mission is attracting companies to the Garden State. And by the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor, Office of the Attorney General. Promotional support provided by NJ Advance Media and by Jaffe Communications, where business, media, and government converge in New Jersey.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. This is State of Affairs. We're coming to you from the Agnes Varus NJTV studio in Newark. It is our pleasure to introduce Jerry Zaro, Chair of the Gateway Development Corporation. Good to see you, Jerry.
Good to be with you.
A lot of talk about this Gateway Tunnel. What is it and why does it matter? And I'll tell you what, as we talk about it, we're going to start showing some video that puts things in perspective. Talk to us, Jerry. What are we looking at right now?
Well, this is the condition of our 108-year-old tunnel. It has outlived its usefulness. It's been ravaged by
Tell
Hurricane
folks where it is.
Sandy. It goes from Weehawken under the Hudson River into Penn Station in New York. You get to it with the Portal North Bridge, also of that same vintage. And Steve, to give you just some perspective, at the time we built the bridge, at the time we built the tunnel, electricity was in only 2% of the homes in all of America. Now it's everywhere. The Wright brothers were just launching their first plane. We send spaceships now to space. We had no infrastructure at that time, yet look at all the advances we've made in these areas. The minimum wage was 23 cents back then. Look where it is today.
When it was built.
1910.
This issue is critical right now. We had Senator Cory Booker, United States Senator Cory Booker, presidential candidate. Jackie helped me. He called it. He said, if one of these tunnels goes down, it is traffic Armageddon. Is that an understatement?
Not at all. This is...
Or an overstatement?
No, it's neither. It is, we are in the midst of a national disaster happening in slow motion.
Someone might say, hold on, that's New York and New Jersey. It's not they'll say Gateway's not a national issue. Jerry, you say?
That's totally false because, first of all, the Northeast Corridor runs from Washington, D.C. to Boston. Every train that runs there goes over this bridge and through that tunnel. It is very much a national issue. In addition, trains that follow the Northeast Corridor, they go into Georgia, Indiana, Ohio. This is a national issue. And Steve, one other point on this, totally lost in the debate. These are federal assets. Amtrak owns these tracks. Amtrak owns this tunnel. So some could say, why are the states being asked to support a federal project when, in fact, it's a federal project?
Let's put this in perspective. As Jerry talks about the states, New York and New Jersey, Governor Christie, former Governor Christie, and Governor Cuomo of New York came to an agreement as to which state was going to put in how much. Governor Murphy continues that commitment, but the Trump administration, even though Donald Trump is from the New York area with a major golf course in Bedminster, New Jersey, he knows this area. I thought originally he had said that this was a top priority infrastructure project. Then in the budget that was introduced, unless I have this wrong, Jerry Zaro, there's no funding for the Gateway project.
There is no funding for the Gateway project, but thanks to Cory Booker, Bob Menendez, Chuck Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, and our incredible core of people in the House.
The congressional delegation.
We have funds in the budget camouflaged under different names so it would get by and the president would allow it to go through. These are the games that we are playing while our commuters are playing transit roulette.
By the way, how much are we talking about? Sorry, this is Jerry Zaro, by the way, if you're listening to us on the audio side, chair of the Gateway Development Corporation. They are charged with trying to get this project done. Tell folks, what the total cost?
Last year, we had $541 million set aside. This year, $650 and $130. We have about $1.4 billion sitting, waiting just for a box to be checked.
Jerry Zaro called this whole situation. He said, Gateway is a political pawn, a political hostage in or of Washington. What does that mean?
Well, it means that we applied for, and we submitted an environmental impact study. We're waiting for, you'll forgive the acronyms, a ROD, a record of decision. Once we get that, we're off and running, building this tunnel and the bridge. We submitted in 22 months. Normally, it takes 4 years. That application has been sitting on a desk in DOT in Washington.
Department of Transportation. Why?
Why politics? Because
politics
they've
about
been
what?
told. The president wants what he wants. He feels evidently.
Hold on. Are you going to go with the wall here? Are you saying a wall for a tunnel? A wall for Gateway? Is that what this is?
Well, I think there is a strong kernel of truth in that. I think that he and Senator Schumer and the Northeast delegation, remember, he didn't get one electoral vote out of either New York or New Jersey.
And by the way, sorry for interrupting, Jerry, let's make it clear that Senator Schumer is not just a United States Senator from New York. He is the minority leader in the United States Senate of all the Democrats. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, and I think that President Trump, who's reported and reputed to be this great negotiator, feels that he has to get something more before he gives this. I do believe, I can't believe that with all the people around him from New York and New Jersey, he's not aware of how acutely needed this tunnel is.
United States Representative Josh Gottheimer on this show and in other places said we need a doomsday plan? If if one of the tubes go down, what are we talking about here?
Well, if one tube goes down, 75% of capacity is lost. You will have an economic, and I'll paraphrase, I'll take the plagiarize, economic Armageddon.
Not just a traffic Armageddon?
No, because people can't get to work. If people can't get to work, how long are they going to be able to hold their job? It can't be every day, what time are you going to make it in? You have to be reliable. And we would lose 75% of our traffic. We would cut our commuting down from 200,000 people to 50. It would be an intolerable situation. Going back for a minute to your
2 seconds, go ahead.
Point about Trump, you know, he is doing this now on all infrastructure projects. This budget has a 23% reduction in DOT's budget, 22% for Amtrak.
That's right.
And a 40% reduction in capital improvement.
But Jerry, 30 seconds left. What would be the rationale for the president who's into job creation to do that?
Steve,
these are millions of construction jobs.
And taxes that they would pay. We're going to get this tunnel built. The issue is, are we going to do it with disaster relief money, or are we going to do it with preventive money in advance to do the right thing? Make America great. Best place to start right here.
Jerry Zaro is chair of the Gateway Development Corporation, and I want to thank you for laying this out for us. It's very important, not just to this region, but to the nation.
Thank
Jerry.
you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Stay there. I'm Steve Adubato. This is State of Affairs, and we'll be right back.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We are pleased to be joined by, once again, Julie Roginsky, who is Democratic strategist, president, Optimus Communications. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
You've had the most fascinating career.
Thank you so much for saying that. It's been interesting.
It's been interesting. By the way, can I plug your podcast?
I'd love for you to.
What's it called?
It's called Saltier Politics. You could find it on iTunes. You could find it across every Podbeam, and it's great. You should come on.
What do you do?
You know, we interview people, and what I found, and you know this because you have a public affairs show, but what I found having done cable news for so long is you really can't delve into issues or discussions in a soundbite environment. And so what we try to do, my co-host and I, is have a show where we could actually talk about issues in a really in-depth, prepared way. And then we talk about what makes us salty that week in politics.
Love it. By the way, make sure you check out our podcast, Think Tank, the podcast. You'll be seeing more of it. You look at our website. So I'm curious about something. Can we go through some issues?
Sure.
Number one, I got to do this. The Democratic Party. You know you know politics better than anyone I know. Is there one Democratic Party, or is this the socialist, progressive wing of the party, the Ocasio-Cortez wing, and then Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, and some others over here? What's the party?
We're a big tent. We're all
That's
comers.
a big tent.
That's a big tent. Listen, it's a big tent, and the nice thing is we haven't been hijacked by any one segment of the party the way the Republicans have been by Donald Trump. I'm not implying. I'm saying it outright, Steve. I'm saying it straight into the camera.
So the Republicans have been, quote unquote,
hijacked by Donald Trump.
Make the
by
case.
Trumpism. Well, I mean, you have previous people, Republicans, long-standing Republicans, like Lindsey Graham, who were saying Donald Trump is a threat to this nation. He did, and now they are groveling at his feet, making excuses for all sorts of things that they would never find inexcusable before. He has completely taken over the Republican Party, and I'm frankly embarrassed for a lot of people that I respected in the party. Mitt Romney's a great example, somebody who thought Donald Trump was dangerous, said that he should absolutely release his taxes yesterday or the day before, recently said, well, I sure hope he releases his taxes. You're a senator. You can compel him if enough senators compel him to do that.
So
yes.
That's your view of the Republicans. Can we go back to the Democrats?
Happy to.
You know, I saw a recent clip of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. And by the way, New Jersey has its own version of a chasm, if you will, in the Democratic Party. There's the Phil Murphy, let's say more progressive wing of the party. And then there's Steve Sweeney, not in the same place on a lot of issues. They agree on some things. But let's do this. On the Democratic side, Nancy Pelosi was saying to Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and others, listen, you want the new Green Deal? Great. Can you please talk to me about how you pay for it? So help us understand something. The economics of how you pay for the new Green Deal, whether we can tax wealthier Americans to the degree that's being talked about, a whole range of things. Is that an agenda that will win in 2020 in your view for the Democrats?
You know, I would just say this to Nancy Pelosi and to all other Democrats. I find it very interesting that we're consistently asked to pay for things, whether it was the Affordable Care Act, which was paid for, whether it's this. Meanwhile, the Republicans are going on a spending spree. I mean, they're spending like drunken sailors. Nobody talks about what these tax cuts have cost the economy. They certainly weren't paid for. Trump's tax cuts. Nobody's talking about what wars have cost the economy. Nothing is ever paid for when the Republicans do it, and yet, as soon as the Democrats come up with a proposal, oh, we need to have it paid for, we need to have it paid for. You know, there are offsets to, and I don't necessarily support every element of the Green New Deal, but think about the fact that this would actually save money from a healthcare perspective. People would have fewer illnesses if you had a good environmental, look here in New Jersey, how many of us have to pay for the fact that we have a bad environmental outcomes here in New Jersey that cost people money for healthcare purposes? There are ways, and never mind that people talk about consistently how, oh, Barack Obama subsidized Solyndra, he subsidized these renewable energy. How many oil and gas industries do we subsidize in this country?
All legitimate points, but the economics do matter.
Economics absolutely matter. I would just simply like to say that let's run on ideas, and let's not forget that both parties have to be fiscally responsible. It's not just incumbent on Democrats to be fiscally responsible. Both parties have to be.
Let's connect it to 2020, and I have to bring it back New Jersey, because that's what State of Affairs is focused on. We have a United States Senator from New Jersey running for president. How's he doing, Cory Booker?
I think he's doing really well. Look, Cory, there are probably 5 to 6 serious contenders for this nomination. Cory Booker's in the 5 or 6 serious contenders. I mean, he's a senator. He's a former mayor. He's had really tangible successes in the Senate. Certainly, he has legislation passed, criminal justice reform.
Yep.
Which is important to the Democratic base, and certainly something that even Donald Trump was able to support. He has a great resume, and I think he's a serious contender.
So back in New Jersey, even closer to home, the political landscape in the state. How much do you think the issues, and by the way, you should check out, Julie has a column with Mike Duhame, our good friend, who was a Republican and was a chief political strategist for former Governor Chris Christie, also in the presidential campaign as well. He was with him. The column is called?
The column is called Friendly Fire. I don't know what they call it, but we call it internally.
It's Friendly Fire.
Yeah,
and it's every...
I believe it runs in the paper on Fridays, and it runs online whenever we do it.
Check it out on NJ.com and also in the Ledger. But here's what I'm saying on this. There was a question that you were asked by the editors there about what's going on between the governor and the state legislature. How much of the stalemate on a lot of issues, whether it's a millionaire's tax, a whole range of budget issues, medical marijuana, legalizing marijuana, a whole range of things. How much of it has to do with a personal thing, you think, between the governor and the Senate president versus ideological differences? And also, and let's include the Speaker of the House, Craig Coughlin.
A lot. I mean, it's both. Certainly, I think on
Is politics personal?
Politics is personal, and relationships are important in politics. You know this because you've been around this all your life. It is incredibly important to develop personal relationships, and especially among the governor and the Senate president. I look back at the previous administration. Chris Christie and Steve Sweeney were able to get things done together because they had a personal relationship, though they were from different parties. And there's no excuse for Democrats not to be able to do much more than that. But unfortunately, it's a relationship that wasn't tended to. And it's a shame, and I think it could be fixed, but it would take both parties wanting to come together and fix it.
I know this is going to sound big picture, but I want it to be grounded in this. The governor said publicly he didn't believe in, quote, transactional politics. Whether it's horse trading, you need what? You need a road for your district? What do you need? Oh, I need this vote. He said, I don't believe in that. He said, I'm going to go out there and make the case on the merits.
Well, if he's making the case on the merits, he needs to do a better job making the case on the merits, and I would say that his press shop then needs to go out there and really put together events for him that helps make the case. Having said that, marijuana legalization was supported by the majority of people in New Jersey. Didn't get done.
You think it's going to happen?
The millionaire tax, it might eventually, but it certainly didn't when it could have.
No, it did not, right. Millionaire's
tax is very popular, but is not getting done, and it's not getting done in part because of personality differences, and I think in part because of the fact that it's an election year and Nobody wants to have any kind of taxes up this year from the legislature standpoint. But I also think that transactional politics is not a dirty word. Transactional politics means that we sit together, we figure out what your priorities are, what my priorities are, and we work together to enact those priorities.
Compromise?
Sure.
Compromise, a dirty word?
Compromise is not a dirty word, and compromise involves transaction. I mean, you have to transact in order to compromise, right? And so when the governor says he doesn't believe in transactional politics, first of all, I don't know if that's true. The governor is wise enough to know that you need to have a transactional relationship in order to get anything done. He's a former Goldman Sachs banker.
He's gotten things done.
He's gotten things done. Look, he's a former Goldman Sachs banker. I mean,
I would argue there's some transactional activity there.
Yeah, I would think they transact. So, I mean, he's not naive to this.
Deal making? How dare you say there's deal making?
Right. I mean, look, the governor is not naive. I spent 4 years glued to the hip with the governor on his campaign. I can tell you he's not naive about this. There's no reason why they can't sit down and hash it out.
So that's Julie Roginsky. She's got to be one of the smartest people when it comes to politics and policy around, not just in New Jersey, but in the nation. Democratic strategist, and also with Optimus Communications.
Yep.
And check out your Saltier Politics
podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thanks so much.
I'm Steve Adubato. That's Julie. We'll be right back right after this.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
State of Affairs welcomes back Anthony Russo, President of Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey, and also CEO and publisher of Commerce Magazine. Here it is right here.
Thank
Commerce
you for having me
Magazine.
back.
Tell folks how often this comes out.
Every month we print the magazine. It's also available online. And the issue you have in front of you is our special one where we highlight the charitable good works our companies do for their communities.
Who's it for, this magazine?
It's for the business. It's a business-to-business magazine. It goes out to about 30,000 people. So very proud of it.
And we have a cross-promotional relationship with your publication. You just said to me it's all about the budget before we got on the air. It's all about what? The governor's budget?
Governor's budget.
What's in it that matters to the business community?
Yeah, we just take a step back. Everything that happens in Trenton, we believe when you represent all the businesses that we do, 900 companies, that politics is woven into the fabric of business.
How dare you?
And so what we tell our members is, yeah, you have to pay attention to what's going on in Trenton, especially during the budget season, because that's when they either propose taxes, cut spending, initiate new programs. So this is an important time of the year, and I told them to be vigilant between now and June 30th.
Okay, so the millionaire's tax. The governor says we need that money. You and I have talked about this for years.
Right.
It went up a little bit last time for $5 million and up.
Right.
Governor now says for every penny or dollar over $1 million, we need to take a little more to create tax fairness, you say?
Well, I say that he should do a deeper dive, and I'm using his words, when he says his agencies went back and looked for some savings, and they came out with $200 million worth of savings. We're telling them, go deeper, because we think that the cost of government's too high. So before you even initiate a millionaire's tax or any kind of tax, you really have to go back and check your own numbers and see if you could find those savings there.
You think there's some savings there. In fact, the Senate President, Steve Sweeney, will be joining us. We have an in-depth interview we're taping next week as we're doing this program. The Path to Progress report, it talks about finding savings, looking for ways to be more cost-effective, the pension crisis, et cetera. Why is this report, Path to Progress, so important?
It's important because it came out last August, and I give the Senate President credit and his team, because what they did was they did the deep dive into the cost of government. And what they realized was that they have to do a few things. And we looked at that report, and we support the majority of what's in there. And I'll give you a couple examples.
Sure.
Everybody talks about consolidation and shared services. We're actually moving away from the word consolidation because we get that everybody likes their home rule. 566 municipalities. Shared services is more the way to go. So if there's cost savings with police departments, EMS, even public works, that's the way to go. That's where you could have some savings. We think the 800-pound gorilla continues to be the pension crisis. I mean, if it came due today.
The public employee pension crisis. But hasn't a lot of progress been made?
It has.
Tony,
going back to 2011.
Yeah, 2011, the Christie administration, together with the Senate President, the Democrats, and the legislature. But didn't the Communication Workers of America, one of the largest public employee unions in the state, make an arrangement with the governor, Governor Murphy, to give back more in terms of health care costs?
On the healthcare side, yeah, that's one argument. I'm looking at just the pension obligations.
How bad is this situation? And by the way, why should someone says, I'm not a public employee, why should this matter to me? Tell
Because
them.
it matters, because at the end of the day, New Jersey's on the hook. So if our pension liability...
On the hook, that's a Jersey term for we got to pay for it?
Right.
Don't go neighborhood on me.
Okay, I won't. I'll try
But
not
you get
to.
on the hook for it. We got to
I'm
pay
a Jersey
for it.
City on you.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
But when I say on the hook, we're responsible at the end of the day, the citizens of New Jersey, the state of New Jersey. So the public workers, right, they earn that pension, they deserve it. So it's not a question of them, deserving it. Our question is how are you going to pay for it? So if the pension liabilities exceed $80 billion, according to some actuaries, and I know that the governor is proposing a high payment in this budget, $3.8 billion, but I think further reforms are needed. Maybe a migration to a 401k plan, maybe some cost savings that way. But he deserves a lot of credit because on the healthcare side, he did work out an agreement with the unions to save some money.
But not enough.
Again, it all depends
more on the
on
pension side
yeah,
versus
it all
the healthcare
depends
side.
on yeah.
Let me try this. Do you the innovation initiative? We have an initiative called the Future of Innovation. You just had a panel discussion. Help us on this, Mr.
Yeah,
Russo.
last
What did
week
you have?
we had a discussion at Montclair State University, their new communications theater.
Which is great,
on artificial intelligence. We had speakers from Rackspace, Google, and really what I learned from our event last week, maybe the term artificial is the wrong term. I was educated last week. It's really augmented intelligence and what they mean by that, and I didn't have that appreciation. I think everybody thinks of artificial intelligence as the Terminator, robots, but what it is you enter all this data into computers and they actually predict an outcome.
Let me do this in the limited time we have. This ongoing debate that if the millionaire's taxes increased, we're going to lose people. I've been at forums that you and your organization have had. I've had other people on the more progressive side of the Democratic Party who say, that's just anecdotal. The evidence doesn't back it up. If you raise taxes on millionaires, you don't lose those people because that's not the one reason why people will leave a state. It has to do with a million other things. You say?
I say you're right, because it's not an easy decision to leave the state. But do you want to pass a tax that makes that decision easier to leave? And what I mean by that is if you think about the millionaires in New Jersey, a lot of them are tied into small businesses. It's family-run businesses, generational businesses. And in the global world that we live in the technology world that we live in, you could service your New Jersey clients from Pennsylvania, Florida, Delaware.
It's easier
so we
to
have
move.
to be careful that we just don't have these folks move out where you don't have that tax base.
Can we speak about this last thing? Got 30 seconds left.
Sure.
Just make it clear that you do not support President Trump's initiative to cap $10,000 on our state income tax deductions, on our property tax deductions. Do you acknowledge that that's very tough for states like New Jersey?
Yes, it's hurt us in the sense that it's made it difficult for the people.
Got the highest property taxes in the nation.
Right. So we do not support it, yeah. We would have wished that he would have done something differently.
You think he might change his mind?
Probably not.
You got a direct line there?
I do not, no. So.
You got a direct line here.
Thank you,
Anthony
Steve.
Russo is president of Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey and also the publisher and the CEO of this publication, Commerce Magazine. Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Anytime.
Thank you for having me.
This is State of Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato. Let's continue the conversation. So join me on Twitter at Steve Adubato. I'll make sure I see you next week.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 30 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of State of Affairs with Steve Adubato has been provided by International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, Hackensack Meridian Health, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Seton Hall University, Choose New Jersey, and by the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor, Office of the Attorney General.
This is Tracy Thompson, New Jersey's acting insurance fraud prosecutor. The state of New Jersey is making learning about and reporting insurance fraud easier than ever. At njinsurancefraud.org, you'll find tips on identifying insurance fraud and a simple, confidential form for reporting it. Report it, end it.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
This edition of the Steve Adubato Leadership Hour has been made possible by New Jersey Resources.